Hey everyone, Vancouver Radio, episode number 449. I hope you're having an awesome time. I hope you're not sweating all over in all sorts of ways with the weather that we're having in the UK. If you're outside of the UK and you live in a hot country, you probably look at us and think, oh my God, look at those UK people, how weak. We get snow and the country shuts down, we get heat and everyone melts, but it has been pretty bad in the UK. I've been working in my garage because it is the coldest place in my habitual place. But yeah, I hope you're having an awesome day. I'm with Tom. It is a Q&A show today. Tom, hello.
Hello everyone. Feels like it's been a while since I've been on.
It has been a little while. Lots has happened in between. Much plant-based musings. Last week we had Cancer Research UK on the podcast, which recording this, it hasn't come out yet and Tom's yet to listen. So I know Tom has quite a few opinions because me and Tom spoke quite a bit before I did the Cancer Research UK podcast on, how I should structure my conversation because I wanted to get it right. I like to get these conversations right because, firstly, it's painful listening to an interview where the guy or girl doesn't really know how they're navigating the conversation and it's kind of a bit stale and almost overly structured. So I spoke to Tom to make sure that the flow kind of came across because it's an important topic. It's a sensitive topic. As we know, it gained an awful lot of interaction in the media, a lot of for and against, and I think we navigated the conversation well. So Tom, at some point it'd be interesting for you to listen to the podcast and maybe we can expand even more beyond it in case you think there's stuff that we kind of didn't really get into enough. Yeah,
definitely. I think the whole conversation just fascinates me, and I think there's a hell of a lot of different angles you can look at it from. Anyone who follows the BTN Academy email list will already know some of my thoughts. If you don't, you should, by the way. But there's always different ways that you can expand on it, and it's so much more broad than just the fact-based, was it true and was it not, I think. I'm looking forward to listening to the show.
So anyway, we've got some questions today to be answered that you have written in. If you ever want to write a question into the show, email bencoomber@gmail.com with the subject line podcast and it will get thrown into the mix. One announcement before we start. Tom mentioned the BTN Academy. We've just confirmed that our next intake for the Practical Academy is the 28th of October. So if you would like to spend a year learning with us and become a qualified nutrition coach at the end of it, the only course of its kind in the UK at level 4 standard, then get enrolled. Go to btn.academy where you'll be able to sign up.
Damn right.
Sweet.
So, let's have a look at question 1. So, hi Ben, I have a question but would prefer to remain anonymous. So I've struggled with managing weight for a long period of time and have struggled with eating disorders in the past. Despite being at a healthy weight now, I still experience disordered eating and drinking and struggle with balance in life with a very rocky diet. I've always preferred being the lower range of a normal weight with a BMI of around 19, max 20 for some time, otherwise I feel like I'm losing control. Nonetheless, I compete in a competitive sport and part of me does feel I could perform better at a higher weight, though I am unsure this is the case, and I'm a bit nervous to let myself go to see if there are any improvements, as I tend to subconsciously worry when I've gained a bit of weight. My question is related to that. There is obviously a huge range of healthy and unhealthy weights, and I know that BMI can be misleading. I would like your perspective on weight and a relatively normal range, as I don't think enough information about being healthy or unhealthy as an individual with a normal-ish weight range is given. It may be that I would be much healthier with a BMI of 25, but it's hard to know or believe that. Basically, I'm looking at healthy weight, or seeming to be, but not actually being healthy.
So, what a good question, and there's just a lot that we can kind of delve into, and I think me and Tom will probably come at this quite nicely from different angles. We've both got experience here. Tom in his own way, which, he can elaborate on however he feels is appropriate. Me as an obese man that went down to good weight and then kind of struggled with gaining weight because they didn't want to get fat. And it's a big problem for a lot of people. If you go to my Facebook page, my Ben Coomber fan page, you'll see pinned to the top of that Facebook page, there's a post about cutting and bulking. And it's a question that I get an awful lot, where people are in this kind of limbo of like, do I need to lose weight? Do I need to gain weight? Because a lot of people want a certain look. They want to maybe look athletic, have a certain amount of muscle mass, but maybe they've got a bit of fat kicking about as well. And whether you are slim or whether you are quite well built, we're kind of always in this limbo. And we follow an awful lot of people online, which means we get an awful lot of stimulus coming in, a lot of images and messages of athletes and friends and family and people that are in our gym that we follow. And some people are on a weight gain journey, some people are on an athletic journey, some people are on a fat loss journey, and we maybe are kind of always in this confused space of like what we should be doing, and we get caught up in other people's goals and our own desires. So it is a very important kind of conversation, and I'll kind of pick up a couple of things, and we'll see how this kind of question evolves. Now, one of the things that we didn't get from this question, and I should have clarified this by emailing this person back, she mentions that she's in a competitive sport, and one of the things that we maybe want to question is whether that competitive sport is the right thing for you long term. It might have served a particular purpose, it might have served a journey for you so far, but you maybe have to question whether it is right for your long-term health and where you need to be. I've kind of picked up on this in a different way in the past, where I talked about CrossFit as an environment, and I was talking about a lady that is into kind of like physique and developing her body and doing weightlifting and stuff, and I said, well, maybe that kind of particular pursuit and style of training is not great for you right now, because that's quite an aesthetically driven training style. What about going to CrossFit, where yes, aesthetics is part of it, but it's more about performance. It's more about living life and being strong and being resilient and also being fit. And you walk into a CrossFit box and there's a guy, training with his top off, and he's got a little bit of a bad dad bod, but under it you can kind of see there's an athletic frame. And I think over time, those people, those environments, those training styles, the look, the feel, everything that's going on, it kind of seeps into you over time. It's an environment, so you get influenced. And if you're surrounded by images of things that are reinforcing where you're currently at rather than where you're trying to get to, you're going to struggle to get to that place. So if you want to be more performance minded, you want to put on a bit more weight, you kind of feel like your current body composition is actually holding back some of your healthier or more wellness driven goals, you going into a bodybuilding type gym or being surrounded by those people is not supporting that journey. So you need to kind of have the confidence to maybe move environments. Like, I train in my garage gym. One of the limitations of that is that I'm never going to be able to train really hard, because it's just really hard to push yourself. Like, you could write on your whiteboard in your home gym, oh, I'm going to do a WOD, 10 burpees into 15 kettlebell swings, into 15 kettlebell snatches, into this, into a sprint. You know that you'll always be 80-90% doing that. Whereas if you went to a CrossFit gym or a similar strength and conditioning driven gym where you did that workout as part of a group, you would beast yourself. You would get fit. That competitive vibe would come out. So I have to be happy that my fitness is limited by the environment that I'm training in. So if I did want to get really fit and push myself, I'd probably have to accept that I'm probably not going to be able to achieve that in my home gym, because the environment is not conducive to the goal. Whereas I might then decide to go to a local CrossFit gym, strength and conditioning gym, a friend's gym that I know of, because I'm going to get that stimulus, and perhaps I go there twice a week and do my hard kind of graft work, and maybe twice a week I stay at home in my home gym and do the heavy lifting, do the more hypertrophy type stuff. But I have to be honest with how, what my goals look like, where I want to be in the environments that I have to be in. So that's kind of one of the first things that I want to question with your journey, because you'll be in a habit loop with your training. And if you're kind of, I'm going to stop there because I think I'm about to waffle my words. Tom's going to rescue me.
Yeah, no worries. So to to add a little bit to that from sort of an anecdotal perspective. So I don't talk about that often, but I went through a period of disordered eating. I was very underweight at one point, and I kind of, from a different angle, completely appreciate what Ben's just said. So one of the big things with me at the time was I was into bodybuilding and focused significantly on leanness as the main driver. I don't know if it's the same now, but because probably not, because most people don't use forums anymore. But if you went on a bodybuilding forum back in sort of 2010 and maybe sort of a little bit earlier than that, the focus was almost exclusively on being lean gains, not getting fat, etc., etc. And once you've internalized that message, the whole thing of bodybuilding just stops being about building and just becomes about being shredded. And being in that environment and surrounding myself with that digital environment was not beneficial to my recovery. So one of the things that I did is I focused on powerlifting. I've changed my focus completely towards being something that was geared more towards performance and progression in the gym rather than progression in the mirror. And I'm not going to sit here and say that that was the only thing that helped, but that was one of the things that I needed to do. And so right in this question, you said here that you've got a BMI of 19, max 20. Now, we all know that the BMI range is not as accurate as it could be. It's not as useful as it could be, but it's a decent approximation of a lot of things. And one of those is that's really quite low. If you're under 18.5 on the BMI, you're classified as underweight. And yes, there was a study a few months ago which was produced which looked at the opposite idea to metabolic healthy obesity. So there are some people who are, for want of a better way of saying it, designed to be slightly underweight. Some people can maintain a BMI of sort of 18 to 20 and be perfectly healthy, but this was an incredibly small percentage of the population. So small, in fact, that this is the first study I've seen on the topic, and prior to that, it hasn't even been recognized. So most people can't perform optimally at a very low BMI, even if we do take into account, obviously, issues with BMI, as I've just said. So looking at this, I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to say that the competitive sport that you compete in is probably either some kind of endurance running or other endurance-based sport, or potentially gymnastics or a similar thing, because both of those sports tend to attract people who are of a lower body weight. And while you are a competitive athlete in that, I would, to agree with what Ben said, ask whether that is an environment in which you are likely to thrive as a person, because competing in this sport, unless you're making money out of it, and even then it's questionable, isn't worth your health, neither physical nor mental. And so if you're surrounded by people who are of very low body weights and you feel like you need to maintain that very low body weight lest you lose control and start to undo your performance, then that might not be the environment for you. That said, you've put here that you feel like you could perform better at a higher weight. So maybe from the other side of it, actually the sport is something that you should look at, and rather than focusing on your BMI, which is, as you've said yourself, not the best metric of anything, focus on your times or your scores or whatever it is your sport's scored in, and just allow your weight to creep up a little bit. I'm going to comment a little bit on how you can do that in a minute, but I think Ben's itching to say something, so I'll let you step in.
No, the only thing I was really going to say is you mentioned what sport you think she might be involved in, but she feels that she could perform better at a higher weight. That's not often the case in endurance or gymnastics.
It depends. I mean, there's diminishing returns in both directions, I guess. But I would suggest someone who's competing at BMI of 19, max 20 probably isn't a weightlifter, for example.
See, I suppose we need to kind of pick up the point on BMI, because there's often lovely debates online about BMI and how kind of accurate it is. And I think me and Tom have made the statement before that BMI is generally a half decent measure of kind of where you're at in the generalist population. So if we look at, you know, a housing estate in kind of any area of a normal urban city, and you took BMI and started to classify people, you'd probably be sort of 80-90% kind of accurate. And that's why, you know, the NHS just use it as a really simple tool to go, right, height, weight, okay, we maybe need to look at this. And again, that's why we need very simple population-wide tools that are easy implementable by something that's got to look, by an organisation that has to look after like 70 million people. So the more complex, the harder it is to implement. Now, when we look at the gym and the athletic environment, I would never use BMI as a measurement tool, and nor would Tom. Would be looking at weight, would be trying to make a guess on body fat percentage. Maybe we just use a visual tool, something like there's quite a lot of kind of graphics online where there's 5 people lined up, and it kind of gives a bit of a percentage body fat kind of range of these people. You can kind of use that. It's a nice simple tool. You can obviously use girth measurements, so you can get a tape measure and measure your waist, your thigh, your bicep, that kind of stuff. So there's a couple of tools that we can start to use that are more accurate. So I would want to kind of, again, yourself, start to question the tools that you're maybe using. Is it good for you? And Tom's rightly highlighted that, yeah, the BMI there is probably a bit low, especially if you've not got much muscle mass. So the BMI scale is probably relevant in your kind of scenario. Once we start to get, average to significant amount of muscle mass on the frame, that's when the BMI starts to really kind of skew itself. Like if you took a BMI scale to a rugby team, it's just laughable. They'd all just laugh in your face. So I think that's worth kind of pointing out there.
Oh yeah, I mean BMI is one of those things that it's not a diagnostic tool, it's a risk factor. And so it's not the only factor that any individual should ever take in. And so while it is not correct that the BMI is useless, it's equally ridiculous that a doctor goes, your BMI is X, therefore, because that's not what the tool was designed for. But even then, I mean, if you look at this person, they're an athlete and their BMI is very low. That means they've probably got a reasonable amount of muscle mass given everything that we've said. And so that BMI might indicate an even lower body fat percentage than would be expected in the rest of the population, and it's still very low. But what I wanted to bring up here was the idea of RED-S, which is relative energy deficiency in sport. It's a pretty complex topic that grew out of the female athlete triad, which is eating disorders, amenorrhea, which is lost menstrual cycle, and osteoporosis, which are 3 things that tend to affect disproportionately female athletes. But it's been stretched out to RED-S because, well, quite simply, it affects men too. And just categorizing it as female athlete triad was missing out a whole bunch of male athletes. Now, the way you calculate this is a little bit complicated, but it is very much worth thinking about. So to calculate it, what you do is you estimate or find out your exercise energy expenditure. So you can use a proxy as saying if you run a mile that burns in the region of 100 calories. That tends to be about right for most people. It's somewhere between like 80 and 110, but you can just call it 100 for the sake of this thought experiment. Other sports will differ. Ben and I wrote a blog on the BTN website recently, which allows you to calculate the energy expenditure from lifting weights if you're interested in that. So you take your energy expenditure and you subtract that from your energy intake. So what you've basically worked out there is your energy intake minus the energy that you're expending in the gym. Then you divide that by your fat-free mass. So take your body weight, subtract your body fat percentage, get that in kilos, and then divide your energy intake minus your exercise expenditure by that figure. So an example that I've just created here is you've got an endurance runner who weighs 70 kilos at 10% body fat, consuming 3,000 calories a day. They're expending 1,000 calories a day in training. So he's got 2,000 calories left over after his exercise. His fat mass is 7 kilos, 10% of 70. His fat-free mass is 63 kilos, which is 90% of 70. So if you do a little bit of maths there, you get his energy availability at 31.7 calories per kilo. So although this guy is 70 kilos, sort of average size, and he's eating 3,000 calories, which is quite a lot, his energy availability is 1 calorie higher than the boundary for relative energy deficiency. So the 2 boundaries you need to pay attention to: 30 calories per kilo. If you drop below that, you're almost guaranteed to suffer physical ramifications from not eating enough as an athlete. And that's going to stretch to things like muscle loss, bone loss, hormone disruption, including amenorrhea, but also in terms of men, it's going to result in lower testosterone, and it puts you at a significant risk of an eating disorder as well. 45 calories per kilo is the suggested energy balance for athletes. So your energy availability, which is your energy intake, blah, 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 should be 45 calories per kilo or more. So the person that's writing this in, if we can take the conversation a little bit away from the BMI and just look at what you're actually doing day to day, because at the end of the day, your BMI is the outcome from your actions. It's not something you can influence. All you can influence is your actions. So if we're looking at what you're doing and you're thinking, well, my energy availability is 45 calories or less, then that suggests that you're not eating optimally. And you're completely right when you say that if you were to gain a little bit of weight, that is going to increase your performance, that is going to increase your health, that is going to increase your well-being. So I would probably try to take your attention away from the BMI. And if you're looking at health and performance, look at energy availability. So that's probably going to result in you eating a lot more food than you are now. And I think that in and of itself is going to tell you that actually you are keeping your body weight too low because you're eating insufficient amount of food. Now, when it comes to you looking at this and saying you don't want to let yourself go, you don't want to lose control, I would suggest that if you are keeping your body weight very low and you're thinking that that is affecting you negatively in some way, then you've already lost control because you're being controlled by those thoughts. People in the, I don't want to call it a community, but people who've experienced eating disorders who speak to each other often refer to like the eating disorder voice, which is that little nagging voice at the back of your head that tells you to stop eating. It's that little nagging voice at the back of your head that tells you that, yeah, you're letting yourself go. You've got too much body fat. This shouldn't be like that. You should start restricting again. And if you're in this position, losing control is not when you eat more. Losing control is when you eat less. And you need to remember that, because if you're wanting to avoid doing that, what you need to do is you need to take control and you need to fuel yourself properly. And obviously, I'm making that sound a lot easier than it is. This is not me telling you off. I'm not trying to make light of it. This may be something that you need to speak to a professional about, or at least a coach. But I would say that if you can do that little bit of maths, I'm not going to call it simple maths, rewind it if you've forgotten it, and you find out that your energy availability is like 30 to 35, which it tends to be for people that I have this conversation with, then you probably need to eat more. And as a final point, if you are feeling low energy, if you feel like your recovery is not good, I've got some symptoms here actually. What have we got? Frequent injury or illness, prolonged healing time, overperformance of therapy or training indicating a tendency towards compulsive activity. So in other words, you're training every day. Fatigue or inability to complete therapeutic activities. Slow gains in muscle strength or muscle wasting despite training. If you're experiencing any of those and you do this little calculation and you're like, oh, my energy availability is like 46, I'm fine. It's not. These are not hard and fast cutoff points. And so even if you do it and it's like, oh, I'm 32, that means I'm above the bottom end range for being problem. No, you still probably got problems. These are just approximations. And so if you are experiencing any of these things, you get ill all the time, you take a long time to heal, you feel like you have to train every day, you're really tired, you don't have the energy to do stuff with family and friends, and muscle gain is extremely slow, or you're losing muscle despite training, speak to a professional, because that may be something that he's looking at.
Yeah, there's a lack of progress assessment on a multitude of variables here, and I've just written a blog for my new website, which is coming in a couple of weeks' time, and it's all based around a health score that I do in my coaching program, Fat Loss for Life. And the reason why I do this health score is I want people to realise there's a lot of ways that you can gauge progress. And quite often when you're very body composition focused, you gauge all of your progress on where your body composition is, which is one factor of your health. So I start to get people to score where they're at on their sleep, their fruit and veg intake, their hydration, their energy every day, just like how happy and motivated they are. Like all of these things are actually really important in life. And I think most fitness professionals and people that do stuff like we do, podcasting, teaching, trying to make people aware of what they're doing in health and fitness, we all feel we've evolved kind of through this body composition phase where we were very vanity and performance focused. And as we've reached 28, 30, 32, 34, we've kind of gone, well, there's more to life than that. Like, you know, I want to be happy. I've got a job. I've got kids. Like, I've got just stuff going on that's more than kind of the gym and stuff. And I think we need to have the strength to look up to that and see that wisdom, even though we might be someone that's 24 and quite performance and vanity focused, and that's absolutely fine. Like, you know, I was very driven with those goals when I was younger, but I think I was very aware and had a lot of other goals that were focused around adventure, travel, going out, experiencing things, and I feel I kind of navigated that quite well. So with that, you might sit down and create your own little health score by looking at things that mean a lot to you. So what does mean a lot to you in life? Do you want to be energized? Do you want to be healthy and happy? Do you want to feel strong? Do you want to look a certain way? And that's fine. We're not going to detract away from that being a goal for someone. Do you want to be successful in your career maybe? Do you want a more fruitful relationship? Like, write all that stuff down and focus yourself out of 10. And what you're going to have to do over time is you're going to have to keep scoring yourself. And if that score keeps being like 30 and 40 because you've maxed out on your 10, so I do this on a 10 out of 10. If you've maxed yourself out on like your body composition score and nothing else is going up, you know that you're not really working towards a real balanced you, someone that's going to thrive long term. And I think alongside that, and I don't know how Tom feels about this, but what I see in periods of therapy for a lot of people is you will often use a journaling process where you'll sit down and you'll just write how you'll feel. And the reason why that's important is you take the emotion out of every situation that you're struggling with and you start to see the context a lot more. You start to see the logic. So if you write down, oh, I'm unhappy, and you write down why, and then you start to explain to yourself why you're unhappy, you start to take a lot more of a logical approach to why you're unhappy, and you can start to see and contextualize a solution because the action of putting it down on paper adds logic to that kind of equation rather than just being in your head and, you know, bouncing around like a bouncy ball in a box. So by using a broader assessment tool for yourself and writing about it and being reflective every day might start to make you realise what is more important to you. What's additionally important to you other than, you know, kind of your body composition goals.
Definitely, and I think it is interesting because your goals definitely do start to change and develop over time. And I used to hear people say that when I was like 20. And I didn't believe them, and yet here we are. When we're looking at questions that you can ask yourself, I've actually brought up here questions for intake history to alert a clinician of possible low energy availability. It'll take me about a minute to read these out, but I think what I would probably encourage you to do if you are listening to this and you feel like this is you, or if this is your question, write these down as I ask them. And then have a real think about it and answer them for yourself. And then just look over your answers and just think, am I in a good place? Because, again, your question here is saying, I don't think enough information about being healthy or unhealthy as an individual with a normal-ish weight range is given. The answers to these questions will tell you all you need to know. Because this is the thing. One of the reasons why that information is not given is because it is so individualized. BMI is, as I've said, it's not a diagnostic tool. It's a risk factor indicator across a population. If you take 1,000 people with a BMI of 16 and 1,000 people with a BMI of 25 and 1,000 people with a BMI of 35, you can predict pretty accurately what will happen in those three populations in terms of various different health conditions. But if you take an individual at a given BMI, you know basically nothing about them because individuals are not populations, individuals are individual data points. And so it's not very easy to comment and say, oh, well, people of a BMI of 23 are much healthier than people of a BMI of 19 because you don't know that. But you can use these other tools, and this is why I would encourage you to pretty much ignore BMI for now. So first thing is menstrual history. So have you had a menstrual period? How old when you had your first menstrual period? When was your most recent menstrual period? Is your cycle regular? And are you taking any form of hormones such as birth control pills, estrogen or progesterone? What that's going to do is that's going to tell you, are you having a regular menstrual cycle and is it of normal frequency? Did it kick in when it was supposed to? And then, of course, the last question is the median factor. Eating history. How do you feel about your weight? Are you on a special diet? Are there certain foods you exclude from your diet? Are you trying to lose or gain weight? Has anyone told you that you could improve your performance if you were to lose or gain weight? Do you have an eating disorder? Have you ever suffered a stress fracture? Have you ever been told you have low bone density or osteoporosis/osteopenia? Do you have frequent tendon or muscle injuries? Does muscle soreness last for more than 2 days, or do you find it hard to recover from a strenuous workout? Do you feel tired when doing day-to-day activities? Are your bowel movements regular? Do you have to use laxatives regularly? Do you feel bloated or suffer from stomach cramps? Do you vomit frequently? Do you get colds or illnesses often? Has your growth been along a normal developmental curve? Do you feel energized for workouts? How many hours of sleep do you average per night? And do you feel rested in the morning? Do you get dizzy during a workout or when you stand up? Does your heart rate ever race or feel like it's beating slowly? How would you describe your mood most of the time? Are you often irritable? Do you have trouble concentrating? Do you feel frequently sad or discouraged? Have you been diagnosed with depression? Now, again, there's a lot of questions. Write them down and answer them for yourself. I think it'll tell you a lot.
Fascinating. And that's why health is kind of complicated. And, when we talk about, our goals, we have to be so broad because they can so easily be isolated with our external influences. When we go in the gym and we see impressive things and we look at strength and we look at body composition, it's so easy to focus on that and forget other things. And quite often the pain of a journey gets glorified. So if you're really tired, it's like, it's okay that I'm tired because I've trained really hard this week. And it's like, well, have you eaten enough? Have you slept well? Like, all of those things impact on your recovery. So while you could be tired from training, you could be tired from inferior recovery. You're just not supporting yourself. And don't get me wrong, there's a certain threshold for everyone when however much you sleep, however much you train, it's just too much training. And for me, I know that's kind of like 5 hard sessions a week. I can do 4 hard sessions a week. But if I do 5, I just really struggle to, hold my shit together towards the end of the week. I'm kind of recovering at the weekend. And for me, that's not personally where I want to be. I don't want to train hard all week, work hard all week, have a lot of intensity all week, and then get to my weekend when I'm meant to be having fun and meeting with friends and family and just like being tired and justifying that as okay because I trained really hard and I'm kind of this sort of part-time athlete. I don't think that's really where I want to be long-term for myself, because I want to live all areas of my life with kind of energy, passion and intensity. Anyway, tangent.
Yeah, I mean, you get a lot of people who are quote-unquote like motivational people. Like, what's that dude called that gets up at 4:30 and he posts a picture of his watch every day?
Jocko Willink.
Yeah, like, he's an incredibly inspirational person, but he is the exception because he is the person that can deal with that, and there'll be lifestyle and genetic factors that enable him to do so. Like, if you do follow those people, like, yeah, fine, consider them to be inspirational, motivational, or whatever, but that doesn't mean that you have to or even could emulate them. Like, I think that it's really important for people to remember that it's results that matter and there are no prizes for the person that worked harder than everybody else. Mm. Like, if you're training 10 hours a week and there's someone training 4 hours a week and they're stronger than you and fitter than you and faster than you and more mobile than you, then they're winning. Just because you're training harder than them, that doesn't mean anything. And we also need to accept, when we're looking at people like that, the influence of genetics, because it's massive. I mean, and people like to say, oh, genetics don't mean everything. Like, if you work hard, you can outcompete genetics. Ed Cohen, who's considered one of the best deadlifters ever, deadlifted 435 pounds at a body weight of 135 pounds the first time he ever went into a gym. Like, genetics mean a lot. Mm. So it doesn't, Ed Cohen trained extremely hard, but he had a bit of a leg up. I think Greg Knuckles has got a similar blog on that where I think he deadlifted 400 pounds the first time he ever walked into a gym. Some people might never lift that. And it's not for lack of working hard. And it's not me saying that people with good genetics don't work hard, but you need both to be really successful. You need both to end up on like King of the Lifts compilations on Instagram. And if you've only got the work ethic, I guess it comes down to a point of saying, well, are you getting out from what you're doing enough to justify what you're putting in? Because if you don't have the genetics to be extremely good at something, then the Pareto principle says that you get 80% of the results from 20% of the effort. So why not just put 20% of the effort in and use the other 80 to do other stuff?
Love that point, because we can work as hard as we want at stuff that we are passionate about, but maybe it's not truly aligned with everything that we want. I genuinely believe that everyone can be really good at something, and you might sit down and go, I really want to be like really strong. I kind of want to be really strong, but I know that I can't be really strong. I just don't, like, my genetics don't make it that way. Like, I've trained with strength training, and I've never been able to get over like 217.5 deadlift. Like, I'm happy with that, but you wouldn't describe it as a really heavy deadlift. You wouldn't describe it as someone that's really going to go and knock on like strength doors and just perform really well in competition and stuff. Same with endurance. I don't really excel at endurance. I don't really excel at rugby, but I do all of those things recreationally because I enjoy them. They challenge me, and I'm kind of cool with that. But where I do want to be good at is I want to be really good at inspiring other people, building a business that provides for me and my family, and I know that I can win at that really easy because I can acquire those skills. So for me, my kind of point is that you might be putting loads of effort into something that you are passionate about, but it's kind of maybe a little bit short-sighted. It's maybe an amalgamation of kind of other people's goals and passions and stuff. And you might be sitting there thinking, I'm really crap. Like, what's the point? It's like, you might be really crap, and what's the point at those things that you're trying to be good at? Well, flip it on its head. Like, what are the other things that you're good at? Like, you might be really good at maths. Well, how can you win at life being good at maths? Like, there's probably loads of ways you could do it. Like, developing algorithms for app companies. Like, I don't fucking know. Like, but it's about identifying your skills and what you can be really good at and going all in. It's like, I remember speaking to a kid who was at school, and this kid was getting bullied a lot for their size and their height. And, don't get me wrong, it was slightly out of the norm. This girl was like 5'11", which is tall for a girl at 16. She was quite broad, she was quite athletic, and everyone else wasn't really that body type. And I'm like, you're comparing yourself to everyone else, but how passionate would you wake up every day if you decided to channel the energy and the genetics and the ability that you've got into something that you can win at? So you could maybe be a really good female basketball, or you could be really good at athletics. You could do the shot put. They've got the javelin. And the thing is you can become very happy by channeling energy into something that you get a return on your investment from. So whether it's the norm or not, it doesn't matter. If you're getting the reward from it, and you're kind of waking up every day going, I can't wait to go out and do X, then you're winning at life. And I think that's kind of really cool. And I kind of took quite a lot of satisfaction sitting this kind of young girl down going, just what could you be good at? And years later, she's still doing that thing that I suggested to her, and she's very happy, and she's now very proud of her bigger than normal height and kind of build and all the rest of it. But she embraces it, she loves it, she thrives in it because she's doing something good with it and she's successful with it, rather than wishing she was kind of the same as everyone else.
That's brilliant. I think that's that done. The only thing that I want to add, just because I know this question will come up, when I've mentioned the 45 calorie per kilo thing, you will have to go under that if you're in a calorie deficit for weight loss. Like, that's fine. It's just not somewhere that you should be all the time, just because some people are going to ask that question.
Right, Tom, that was a good show.
That was a good show.
We planned 4 questions and did 1, so at least we've got some content for next week.
Oh, we've never done that before. That's really unusual. Tangent. We always answer all of the questions.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to really struggle deciding on the title of the show.
Yeah. I'm going to be no help there. I'm crap at that.
I will be sending you ideas after we've recorded this. Anyway, we will leave this podcast there. If you want our help on anything, if you're unsure of anything, you want to raise a question, you want to challenge us, you want to add your perspective, find the post on social media that always goes out advertising this show, or slip into my DMs or BTN's DMs, which Tom replies to on social media. And yeah, just generally engage with us. If you've enjoyed this show, be amazing if you could share it or tag someone into the post, because this information then helps more and more people. Just to finish, if you do want to train with us to become a qualified nutrition coach, the next intake for the BTN Academy is the 28th of October. Otherwise, go away, have an awesome day. I hope this podcast has had an impact on you and it's given you something to think about. That's all we really want this information to do. That is goodbye from me.
Cheers, everyone. It's goodbye from me.
And have an awesome day. Goodbye.